Zoom says 7:26.
That's even worse.
No, these computers are slow.
Probably gonna fall asleep. I know.
Like the Three Stooges routine with the 5 watches. That sounds rich.
I know, right?
Okay.
Okay.
I know.
Your grass is off, that is from, yeah. That's off, basically, ground, this is C2, it's got a combined C2, so it's have, so I have 2 boxes, so all 3 converge at a point above the others. Yeah, leave Germany. With the steel press with us, so here's the thing.
7:30.
Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call the East Amwell Township Planning Board February meeting to order. Please rise for a flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Krista, can you take attendance?
In compliance with the Open Public Meeting Act, this is a regular scheduled meeting pursuant to the annual meeting notice as published in the January 21st, 2021 issue of the Hunterdon County Democrat. A copy of the agenda was forwarded to the Hunterdon County Democrat, filed in the Township Clerk's office, and posted on the bulletin board and Township website on February 5th, 2021. Mark Castellano.
Here.
Tamara Lee.
Here.
Mike Mills.
Here.
Natalie Nelson. Jackson Ryder. John Saramba.
Here.
Jason Silverthorne.
Here.
Marnie Stetson.
Here.
Rick Wolf.
Here.
And Tim Willie.
Here.
Elena Gable.
Here.
Okay.
Any agenda changes, Krista?
No.
No agenda changes. At this time, I would like to get a motion to open the meeting to the public on items not on the agenda tonight. Can I get a motion, please?
I'll move to open to the public.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Anybody in the public?
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody in the public care to speak about anything not on the agenda tonight?
Does anybody on Zoom like to speak that's not, for anything that's not on the agenda? No.
Can I get a motion to close to the public, please?
So moved.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Presentation of minutes from January 13th, 2020.
21.
That's 21, sorry. Anybody have anything, any comments?
You need a motion first and then ask a comment.
Can I get a motion to approve the minutes?
Moved.
I'll second.
Any questions or corrections?
I made some corrections in the Google Drive. Or comment and I guess suggestions.
Did everybody see those comments or suggestions? And you're all right with them?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Can I get a motion to approve?
All in
them?
favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
You're good to go.
There are no resolutions to be approved. Moves us on to unfinished business. The farm project. To the planning board members out there here. From the combined meeting, does anybody have any comments or questions or anything they want to bring up as far as the farm project?
We're opening this up to the planning board. Any members of the planning board who'd like to talk about the farm project or the meeting that happened on January 28th, feel free to speak up. How do you want to do this, Chris? To start with Zoom?
Yeah, let me start
here?
with Zoom first.
Okay.
Does anybody from the planning board on Zoom have any comments or about the meeting or regarding the farm project? Just raise your hand so I can see you and then I'll unmute you. No. So then anybody here? John, do you have any questions, comments? Mark? Rick?
Surprisingly, I do. Um, I did want to comment on the farm project, the January 28th meeting. I wanted to comment from the perspective of the Township Committee and give some guidance to the planning board regarding the direction the Township Committee would like the planning board to take regarding the farm project. Following the January 28th meeting, I had a number of conversations with what I call the large farmers, those farmers that are farming significant acreage, small farmers, and residents who are not farmers, but who are interested in the farm project. I've been focusing a fair amount of attention on the large farmers over the last week to 10 days, in part based on comments they made at the January 28th meeting that made it clear to me that we had to have conversations with the large farmers and get more input. The large farmers are not by number the majority of our farmers, but they do farm the majority of our land. And based on the input I received, they seem to have the most issues with the farm plan. A number of them reached out to us after the meeting, reached out to me, reached out to Tam. Mark and I met with Jeff Holby for literally 3 hours. I had an hour-plus conversation with Bill Dufasse Sr. I had a long conversation with Jared Weeks. I didn't time it, but I had a long conversation with him. Mark and I are working on meeting with Kit and Lindsay Christofoli over the next few days. And any other large farmers that would like to chat with us, we really would appreciate if you reach out. I want to thank the farmers that reached out to us. I want to thank the people that spent time with us. I particularly want to thank Jeff for spending 3 hours with us because I learned a lot in those 3 hours. I think Mark did as well. I took a lot of notes. It was a very educational 3 hours. The hour I spent with Bill Dufasse was very educational. Same with the conversation that I had with Jared. It is clear that the large farmers want to work with us to give us a better understanding of their business, their views on farming, and how the township can help their business. And we greatly appreciate that. While the large farmers are not completely uniform in their views, there is a fair amount of commonality, at least based on the discussions that we've had so far. So the question is, where do we go from here? Where should the planning board go with respect to the farm plan? What has become quite clear to me is that the farmers and the residents who are not farmers are supportive of the objective of keeping agriculture viable in East Amwell Township. There doesn't seem to be any real dispute about that. People view us as an agricultural community. Many people moved here for that reason, and people want to see agriculture continue. And when I talk about agriculture, I'm not just talking about crops. I'm talking about our horse farms, our dairy farms. People want to see this area stay agricultural. So how do we get there? How do we do what we can as a municipal government to help keep agriculture viable in East Amwell Township? Well, I break this out into pieces because that's typically the way I approach matters. Try to break them down into their parts. I'm going to start with the large farmers. In general, my impression is that the large farmers would like municipal government to stay out of their business, to leave them alone to do what they do best, to do their farming. They don't want East Amwell sticking our nose in what they're doing. And I understand that. They are the experts in what they do, we are not. That said, there are areas where the large farmers would like our assistance and where I believe we could provide that assistance. First, deer management. Deer are a very, very significant problem for our large farmers. I know this from my own experience on my farm. They can decimate 20, 30, 40% or more of a large farmer's crops. That's money lost to the large farmer. So we had started, our Ag Advisory Committee had started a deer management project a few years ago. For reasons that aren't clear to me at this point, because I wasn't particularly involved with that, it seemed to fizzle out, but I think we need to reinitiate the deer management project. Whether we do that formally through a deer management subcommittee of some sort, comprised of some group of people, which should include large farmers, residents who aren't farmers who have an interest in the deer management issue, and maybe one or two people from municipal government, or whether it is something less formal than that, we could discuss, but we need to focus on deer management. Second, and this would fall within the realm of the planning board, we need to review our ordinances that impact farmers, particularly the ordinances that pertain to farm structures. A farmer who wants to put up a barn should not have to jump through the same hoops that someone who wants to build a house has to jump through. They're just not analogous. The process for putting up a barn or other farm structure on a large parcel of land should not be complicated, should not be time-consuming, and most of all, should not be expensive. Our farmers should not have to go out and hire lawyers to help them do the paperwork. That's just money they're wasting, money they don't have to waste. So we as a planning board have to sit down and go through those ordinances after we have some more conversations, because I definitely want to get more input and more granular on this with our large farmers, but we need to address this. Third, disrespect for our farmers on our roads. Our farmers have to move equipment from farm to farm. We don't have the luxury in East Amwell of having parcels that are thousands of acres where you can just park equipment and leave it there. And the farmers do not have the luxury of having tractors that they can leave on each parcel that they farm. So equipment, sometimes large equipment, needs to get moved from farm to farm. Hay has to get moved. Other products that are generated on the farm have to get moved. And what I'm hearing, and I've actually been hearing this for a while, is motorists are disrespectful of the farmers. I'm not a farmer. I do have a tractor. I was taking my tractor up 579 to Dave Bond's farm for service. I had my left turn signal on and my hand out. And as I was turning, a car went to pass me. He missed the front of the tractor by maybe 2 feet. I can only imagine what the farmers go through who are on the roads day in and day out during the farming season. Now, we do have a project that is getting up and running, dealing with our traffic problems in East Amwell. But we are going to have to tell the police who are going to be helping us with that not to be forgiving of anyone who is not respecting the farmers. This is not a transgression where you get a warning. This is remarkably dangerous. And some of the things that Jeff was telling us about are just the epitome of stupidity, what people do. So we need to focus on the traffic issues. We need to make sure that our farmers have land to farm. Our large farmers cannot profitably do what they do on small parcels. They need large parcels of land, ideally large contiguous parcels. So we need to make sure that we keep our existing farmland as farmland so that they continue to have the large parcels they need to farm. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later on. I suspect that there are other issues that will emerge as we have further conversations with our farmers, our large farmers, but these were the 4 issues that I think we could be helpful and hopefully get something done soon. Our small farmers. We have a lot of small farmers in East Amwell. Some that are just simply 15, 20 chickens who put eggs out to sell, others that are more extensive. But we have a lot of small farmers. They're not relying on farming typically to make a living. They do it to supplement their income. Those farmers, based on the input we got, are very much interested in the farmland, the farm plan as it was presented at the meeting. They like the ideas that Mike Mills presented. They were intrigued by the concept of the higher value crops and organic farming. They recognize that's more labor intensive, but they believe that's how you could make meaningful profits from small parcels of land. What we've been told is they can't do the staple crops of hay, alfalfa, soybeans, et cetera, on small parcels and do that profitably. They want to focus on the ideas that Mike Mills was presenting. So we're going to continue to pursue those ideas, and those farmers who want to engage with us on those ideas, who want to get involved, who want to pursue them, that's fine. None of this is mandatory. This is all optional. People can choose to participate or not. The small farmers also like the concept of a centralized farm market and a farmer's advocate, 2 other things that we presented. Whether one or both of those are economically viable, we don't know at this point. We're going to have to do some more homework and see if we could do those things economically viably. In part, that may depend on whether surrounding municipalities want to participate. If, for example, Delaware Township, West Amwell, even Raritan wanted to participate, that could significantly reduce the cost to each municipality and perhaps make these projects economically viable. But the smaller farmers have made it clear to us that they like these ideas and would like us to continue to pursue them and see where it takes us. The third concept here, the first being the large farmers, the second being the small farmers, the third concept here is the rezoning. The notion of keeping our farmland, pushing development to the 202-31 corridor, and perhaps to some extent in the Ringo's Village, like the senior housing project that we're currently considering next to the firehouse. It seems to me that in order to allow the large farmers to continue to do what they want to do, we have to keep our remaining farmland. We can't have our remaining farmland becoming housing developments. It can't be chopped up into even 10-acre mini farms, because that's not going to allow our large farmers to do what they need to do. I have yet to hear a valid argument against the rezoning that's being contemplated. I've heard some people say it will destroy farming, that it will put farmers out of business. Those are the same arguments that were made when the township rezoned to 10 acres in 1999. We are now 22 years out, and that rezoning did not destroy farming, and is probably a significant reason why farming continued to survive in East Amwell, because it was not overtaken with housing developments. But it is clear to me that our large farmers want to continue to do what they're doing now, which is hay, alfalfa, corn, and soybeans. They need large parcels to do that. It is also clear to me that housing developments are not consistent with keeping agriculture viable in the township, that there will invariably be clashes between the farmers and the homeowners. We already encounter that to a not insignificant extent. That will only get worse. It will increase the traffic problem. My impression is that our large farmers want us to keep our farmland. Many of them don't own the land they're farming, or much of the land they're farming. They're relying on other farms. You're looking at me, am I doing something?
No, you're
okay. Okay. And so this one again pertains to the planning board, but I think we need to move ahead in analyzing this rezoning. Lastly, I'd like to talk for a moment about people pursuing their own self-interests. I'm an elected official. I view myself as a public servant. I think the problem with our political system today is most elected officials have forgotten that they're public servants. And they believe that their opinion matters more than their constituents, or the opinions of large donors matter more than their constituents, and that's too bad. But I view myself as a public servant. My opinion on things doesn't matter. I'm one of 4,000 residents. My opinion really carries no more weight than anyone else's opinion. What I am here to do is to try to figure out what is best for East Amwell as a whole, and then do everything in my power to get that done. That's what I've been doing since I've had the opportunity, starting on January 2nd, 2018. I listen to what the residents have to say. We have public hearings. I make myself very, very readily available 24/7. My cell phone number is posted, my email is posted. I am very, very accessible. That's my role. A resident is not responsible to do what's best for the township. Residents have the right to pursue their own self-interests. So I don't fault any resident who wants to pursue their own self-interests. What I do fault is when residents try to pursue their own self-interests by lying to other residents, by lying to the public. That's where I do fault people. So if you own land in East Amwell, and you don't want the rezoning because you feel it will adversely impact your land, you have every right to speak out against it. You have every right to pursue your own self-interest. If you have a business in East Amwell that sells in part farm products, and you don't want a centralized farm market because you're worried that may adversely impact your business, you have every right to speak out against that. You have every right to pursue your own self-interests, even if it's to the detriment of East Amwell as a whole. That's your choice. But on the other hand, you don't have the right to mislead people, to lie to people, to support your cause. There is a fair amount of that going on right now. There is a website, a Facebook page set up for that very reason. Much of what's posted on there simply isn't true. And so what I'm going to say to residents is, when considering this farm plan, whether it's the components dealing with large farmers, the components dealing with small farmers, the rezoning, be careful where you get your news from. Don't get caught up by false prophets. We have a resident that has spoken out against the farm plan. When you do a little digging, you see that this resident is a developer. This resident does a fair amount of developments in rural areas. Look at the source when you're considering the comments. We do. At least I do. When I'm analyzing comments that I get from residents, I focus not only on the quantity of the comments, I focus on the quality of the comments. And so be very, very careful where you're getting your news from on the farm plan. If you have questions about the farm plan, reach out to me, reach out to people on the planning board who are working on the farm plan. We'd be happy to talk to you. We will send you whatever information you'd like to see about the farm plan. But don't let your view be driven by what you see on Facebook or other social media. That comment goes way beyond the farm plan. That comment goes to our society in general today. But right now, my focus is on the farm plan. So in terms of the planning board, to try to recount what the planning board ought to be doing going forward, we ought to be analyzing our ordinances that impact farmers to see where we could make changes to make it easier to continue to farm. I raised that as an example, the farm structures, but there may be other examples. We really need to go through our ordinances carefully. Krista laughs because a lot of our ordinances are impenetrable. She's charged with enforcing them, so she knows that. With an eye toward, again, making it easier for the farmers to do what they need to do. We're not looking to put the municipality in jeopardy in any way, but it seems to me that a number of our ordinances are just overkill, and we should fix them. Second, we should pursue our rezoning. The AVAD, the Amwell, the Agricultural District, the Amwell Valley Agricultural District, and the 20231 corridor in the Ringgoes Village, with an objective toward pushing the development to the 20231 corridor and to some extent into the village, like the senior housing, and away from our farmland. We should do whatever is in our power to keep our farmland farmland. That's the only way we're going to keep agriculture viable. The large farmers have made that very clear to me thus far in the discussions. They need large parcels of land. Interestingly, we have, people can debate what parcels are and are not targets potentially for development, but we probably have about 17 or 18 parcels, large parcels. Most of those are not owned by people who farm them. In fact, a fair number are owned by people who don't even live in East Amwell. So they don't necessarily have an incentive to keep agriculture viable in the community. Their incentive is to maximize their profit, to someday be able to sell to a developer. Again, as I said earlier, they have every right to pursue their own self-interests. But we here are charged with looking out for the township as a whole. And not only our farmers, but a host of studies that we found in the course of this project tell us that our existing zoning is not adequate and that we need to do more to protect our farmland. I had one large farmer tell me we're not going far enough. I didn't necessarily dispute that, but there are limitations on what we can do. So we're trying to do the best we can within those limitations. We don't have carte blanche when it comes to zoning matters. We are governed by state law. So that is sort of the second task for the planning board. Then the township committee has a number of tasks that we have to undertake. The deer management. We have to get that project up and running again. It's not necessarily something that will be overseen by the township committee, but it is something that the township committee has to get up and running. Whether we do it through the Ag Advisory Committee, a subcommittee, some combination, we have to figure that out. We need to focus on our roads and the traffic issues, the crazy driver issues that our farmers are encountering. That will fall in the lap of John Mills, who is a newly appointed member of the Township Committee. He was a state trooper for 25 years. And he's already working on that. And he's actually made some good progress. And we're going to be reporting on his progress in the next couple of months. But there cannot be forgiveness for drivers who are disrespectful to farmers. The word has to get out that if you get caught doing that in East Amwell, you are going to get punished to the full extent of the law. We have to put a stop to that. And then we have to continue to work with our farmers to solve problems that impact all of them or even some of them. For example, the DNR Greenway parcel on Cider Mill Road, that is having an adverse impact on at least 3 of our farmers, maybe more. And those 3 farmers are farming several hundred acres that are around that DNR parcel. So it is up to the Township Committee to get our arms around the problem, which I'm in the process of doing right now, and then going to DNR Greenway and working with them to solve this problem. So it is up to the Township Committee to assist our farmers, particularly our large farmers, in these issues that may not necessarily be impacting the entire municipality, but is impacting a fair amount of our acreage. And then I'm sure other things are going to come up as we go along, as we have conversations with our farmers, as our farmers feel more comfortable having conversations with us. What I want to make clear again here is these initiatives are voluntary. For example, the initiatives that Mike Mills would like to undertake, we are not thrusting those upon anybody. We are not looking to change the farming practices of anybody. We are just simply looking to offer people information, alternatives, help whenever we can. If we can get grants, we'll work to get grants. But we're not forcing changes down anyone's throat by any means. And if we came across that way on the January 28th meeting, and I'm afraid that we may have, based on the feedback I've received, that's our bad because we didn't intend that. This farm project is something new to all of us, and while a lot of work went into it, invariably, we're going to make mistakes along the way, and we look to our farmers to correct us when we make those mistakes. I'm going to conclude by just again thanking Jeff Bowlby, thanking Bill Dupasse Sr., Jared Weeks, Chris Foley's, and the other farmers who have reached out to us, large and small, after the last meeting, saying, we'd like to be helpful here, what can we do? This project could have a very, very significant, long-lasting impact, positive impact on East Amwell. And I think it's a neat project, and I think it can be a lot of fun. And I'm glad that people want to help us with this. So with that, I will hand it back to Tim.
Thank you. Thank you. At this time, can I get a motion to open the meeting to the public, please?
I second.
All in favor? Meeting's now open to the public.
We'll start with the in the
In-house.
room. Yeah. Jeff, do you have anything to address?
I was wondering if you guys are going to pursue perhaps on the zoning issue. Could or would it be possible, I mean, I'm looking around in this room and I'm seeing essentially not many people, and there's not a whole lot on the screen that I can, you know, as a general population as a whole. Could you maybe send out a questionnaire to these land? I mean, you have the complete list of people who gain farmland assessment. Maybe send out a short questionnaire to poll them so that you guys can maybe get a grasp on if you up the acreage on the zoning, how that would impact their personal lives. Would something like this be possible to do? I mean, it's not, I mean, you guys get it where, you know, if I owned 500 acres and you guys wanted to chop it down to 25 acres a pop, okay, you can understand my frustrations and I can see where you're coming from, okay? But, you know, if you guys want to move in this direction, I mean, I think it would be fair to say, you know, to ask, you know, get everybody's opinion on this.
I agree with that. I really do. And that's what we're trying to do by these hearings. And anybody who has an opinion can reach out. A number of landowners have. Not a lot at this point, but we've had a number reach out.
Didn't the questionnaire go out?
A questionnaire did go out with the last farm
Farmland assessment.
assessment. Very few people responded, but look,
I mean,
Jeff, you know, I'm very accessible.
I understand.
And people can reach out to me. They can talk. You know, to the extent people feel they would be impacted, they could let me know.
Can you repeat the name of the person who is talking?
Oh, it's Jeff Bowlby.
Thank you.
The detriments that people have described thus far are the same detriments that they argued in the litigation and the rezoning in 1999.
Yes.
And the court found all of those to be not valid. For example, some farmers in 99 argued that if you rezone, they won't be able to borrow against their farms to keep their farming operations up and running. Well, when asked to give one example of a farmer who borrowed against their farm operations, their farm to keep their operations up and running, The parties bringing that lawsuit could not cite one example. My understanding from discussions I've had with a key lender to farmers in this area is that doesn't happen very often. Another, I'm just going off the top of my head here, another farmer reached out and said, Raritan Township paid us $19,000 an acre for our development rights. You should pay us $19,000 an acre for the development rights we have in East Amwell. Well, that's not an argument against the rezoning. That's just somebody trying to maximize what they get for their development rights, which I don't fault people for doing. But East Amwell and Raritan aren't the same. Property is worth more in Raritan because their zoning is much smaller lots than in East Amwell. So their development rights are worth more. So to say we should be paying the same, and then when you respond to that, the response you get back is, well, can't you find some wealthy people to make up the difference between what the municipality, the state, the county would pay and what Raritan is paying? Now, I can't really take that argument seriously.
Well, I didn't say find wealthy people.
No, you did not.
All right, I did not say find wealthy people.
No, no.
I'm not about the Robin Hood thing.
No. And look, for what it's worth, I have 94 unpreserved acres. I probably paid the highest amount per acre for those acres that anyone paid for a block of that size. I overpaid for them because it's a beautiful farm and I really wanted it. Whatever impact this has on value, and it's not clear to me it has any meaningful impact on value, but it's not like I'm sitting up here with no skin in the game. I have a lot of skin in the game. You have mentioned when we spoke that you thought this rezoning would devalue the land as much as 75%. Well, those 94 acres, I paid $2.5 million for those. If the rezoning devalues those by 75%, I've just lost $1.8 million. That's a lot of money.
To some.
To just about anyone. Anyone living in East Amwell Township, I'm not aware of anyone where $1.8 million would not be a lot of money. We don't have Bill Gates living in East Amwell. So, look, do I believe, you and I talked about this, I don't see it as impacting it.
Well, I'm just
All I'm
putting
saying
it,
is, I'm not,
We can do another survey
I have skin
though.
in the game here, Jeff.
well,
Okay.
I'm not doing this, I'm not putting this out here to lecture you or to sit here and
And I
figure
know
out
you're not
out.
lecturing.
Putting that survey out, for any landowner, especially one that's going that is actively working his land, that whole farmland assessment stuff, when that comes out, that is the absolute worst time of the year to send that paperwork out.
Right, can we change that?
Jeff, bear in mind, forget about the farmland assessment.
I understand that, but I'm just saying, when you put that farmland, you put that survey in with, it went out with that stuff, well, people barely got enough time to fill this.
Bear in mind, let me rewind where I was a few minutes ago. The property that's already in preservation is not going to be impacted by the 25 acre.
Understood.
The property that's going to be impacted are basically those 18 large parcels for the most part. There are smaller parcels that will be impacted. A 40 acre parcel, now becomes one home instead of 3 or 4 homes. But that's not the issue you're focused on. You're focused on the large parcels, and the large parcels, for the most part, are not owned by people who farm them. In fact, many of them, and maybe even as many as half, are not owned by people who live in East Amwell. Bryce Thompson owns, Bryce's estate owns several of those parcels. Should I be surveying Archie Reed and asking what impact this is going to have on Bryce Thompson? And how useful is that response really going to be? Me, I own one of them. So what? I don't farm it. Whatever impact it's going to have, it's going to have. And there are a number of others that are not owned by people who live in East Amwell or not owned by people who farm them. So yes, we could ask maybe the handful that actually own and farm what impact it's going to have. But people are pursuing their own self-interests. I understand that. And in the end, we have to do what's best for the municipality as a whole. Not for Rick Wolf, not for Mark Castellano, not for Tim Willie. We have to do what's best for the municipality as a whole. And the farmers, you guys, the large farmers, and you're not the majority by numbers by any means, but you are the majority by far in terms of the land farm. Everything that you've said to us weighs in favor of protecting our farmland. I mean, I could get more granular about this, the spraying. You can't spray around a housing development. You know what it's going to do to the lawns? You know what's going to happen if somebody in that house gets cancer? Having nothing to do with your spraying, they get cancer, you're getting sued. Guaranteed you're getting sued. How is that going to help farming? How is that going to help you? You farm 500 acres. If 200 of those go into a housing development, how is that helping you? What about developing this farmland helps the large farmers? Best I could tell, nothing. We're looking out for your interests, which on this issue happen to align, I believe, with the interests of the municipality as a whole. Push development to the 20231 corridor where it's not impacting you guys. Push some of it into the village, like the senior housing facility, not impacting you. This seems to be a win-win all around.
Jeff, do you have any other questions? We can do another survey.
No, I was just throwing it out there.
Okay.
I'm good.
And I want you to. I mean, we really did get a lot out of the 3 hours, Jeff.
I understand this.
We got a lot out of that 3 hours, and particularly after you left, and I sat down and went through my notes, and then I started putting them on the computer because I didn't want to lose what we discussed. We got a lot out of that 3 hours. I mean, I can't tell you how much we appreciate that. Your phone was blowing up. You let people sit, you let customers sit to talk to us for 3 hours, and we really appreciated that. We really did. It was incredibly helpful, incredibly educational. I look forward to meeting with Kit and Lindsay, getting their perspective. After the discussion, it was clear to me that I got some things dead wrong, just dead wrong. And we're going to fix that.
Okay. We're good.
I mean, I had no clue that you actually shipped hay down to Florida.
Oh, I don't, but.
But I had no clue that hay was getting shipped down to Florida. It just seemed totally counterintuitive to me that hay would get shipped to Florida.
Can I blow your mind? I ship like 15,000 bales to Newark every year.
To where?
Newark.
To Newark?
Newark.
So,
For,
well, actually, we work with a large scrap company and they use it for water management, water
Really?
retention around things.
see, I would have never,
goes to Newark?
ever have guessed that 15,000. Of course, I never would have guessed that the largest vertical farm in the country is in Newark,
Yeah,
and it is.
yeah, Barry, yeah.
I'd love to tour it, but they don't give tours. But yeah, I mean, look, this is all a learning process, and life is all about learning. And I'm having fun with this because I'm learning, and I'm learning a lot, and I want to continue to do it. But on the other hand, like I said, I don't want to follow false prophets. There are people out there that are making arguments for their own self-interest, which are just not true. They're saying things about this farm project that just aren't true. They're representing themselves as being farmers when in fact they're no more of a farmer than I am. I probably spent more time on my tractor this summer than the person running that Facebook page. And so people should be getting their information from the source. And in order for the source to be a good source, we have to continue to have these meetings with you guys and learn as much as we possibly can. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to keep doing it. We'll spend as much time as you guys are willing to spend with us to learn as much as we can. To keep this township an agricultural community, to keep to at least try to keep our farmers reasonably happy. I know you're unhappy with the way you've been treated over the last 20, 30 years. From what I've seen, a fair amount of that is justified, that unhappiness. We'd like to try to turn that around. We'd like to be partners with the farmers, not adversaries. That's
Lindsay or
really the goal
Kip, do
here.
you have anything you want
Yeah, I do.
to? This is Ems is your last name? This is Lindsay Ems that's speaking.
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the 25 acre because that does not impact my farm. My farm is preserved. I don't know who those 18 impacted landowners are. So I just think it would be beneficial for you guys, even if it's not a survey, some type of notification to those landowners just as a heads up. Because when that survey did go out with farmland assessment, I'm assuming that they did not know the intention at that time would be a project to make acreage at 25 acres per lot. So I think a heads up to them would just be beneficial and look best on the township. But the only other thing I wanted to say about the farm project is that I've given it a lot of thought, and I totally understand there's people who have, small farms or one crop that they produce that don't have an opportunity to get it into a store and would love to reach a broader audience by selling their product. I would encourage you guys to consider not just the farmers, but during quarantine, I know so many people who came up with a hobby or a quarantine project such as woodworking, basically became artisans during quarantine. So I would suggest maybe instead of just a sold farm market, why don't you make it more of an artisan market where you can get woodwork, other things that are going to come into play that might attract more people than just, cucumbers and tomatoes.
That actually is the intention.
Okay.
The intention was to open up this farm market, not only to farm goods, but we have a lot of people who bake.
Yep.
Like Scott Bond's wife is ridiculously talented. We have a lot of people who have little specialty things that they bake. This guy is like ridiculous with his cooking. Unbelievable. People who do crafts, like you said. That was the plan. The plan was you could go buy vegetables during Christmas season, you go buy Christmas presents, hand carved this, handcrafted that, knitted sweaters. We have people who have llamas and alpacas, socks, etc. I mean, this could be a really neat market. We'd love to put it on 202 so that it has the traffic and the visibility. But yes, the plan was for this to be much more than just eggs and vegetables.
Yeah. Okay.
Take advantage of all the talents here in the municipality, the things that people generate, from baked goods to socks to sweaters to carvings, all that.
Yeah, I don't think that was really portrayed in the original presentation. So when I thought of that, I just thought that was a way to benefit the whole community versus just the farmers.
And I have no issue sending out something to the farms that would be impacted by the rezoning, letting them know that this is going on, and if they want to weigh in, telling them how. I have no issue with that. That's a very small lift for us. So that's fine. I'm fine with that.
You good? Okay, are you good?
Okay.
Okay. Francis? Francis Gavigan speaking.
123 Wartsville Road. I also don't have skin in the game because while it's not preserved, it's a formerly conforming but now non-conforming grandfathered lot. My question is this: back to the gorilla question, has there been a resolution of the lawsuit and the injunction prohibiting involvement in anything that affects the ridge in the last, well, up until now? Because if you change the zoning in the Amwell Valley District, that changes the zoning in the 300 some acres of the ridge. I guess it's Joel, I know you were appealing those for things that were in the summary judgment, but how can this occur in a vacuum when within the center of that vacuum is a litigant that we're probably already going to be owing money to? The other issue is where you've got a bill on the agenda for $4,500 for the Amwell Valley Ag District. I presume it's for the presentations. Where is the money come from? Has it been moved around? Is there a budget? Is it we'll pay it as we go? And I'm still waiting for an answer on that timeline for build out. It was very scary, but I thought I heard something like, well, there'd been 20 houses or units in the 20 years, a good chunk of which would have been peacocks. And, you know, is it going to be in this century before we're at risk of being that map with all those little tiny 10-acre parcels? As in anything else, you have a cost benefit ratio. Is this, 17 or 18 properties? Is it worth the money that you're putting into it when there's not necessarily objective data that supports the risk to farming? Mr. Bowlby, I don't know how much land you guys have lost that you rent to developments. I mean, the last development that I knew of was the one that was for your property that is now moot because you've taken it over. When you built your house, then once, you know, the property, once Fred Rynearson died, you took down his house, so that's a wash, one for one. But I don't know that we got that kind of pressure. And again, is it worth more litigation, or is it worth doing all of this stuff? I don't see how it affects or helps. This started out with helping the small farmers. Now is, well, we want to help the large farmers who have the large acreage. There's also the horse community. There's a synergy and things to that effect. I think at the meeting in the 28th, the guy from the NRC, he had some valid, cogent arguments. Have you reached out or spoken to him or drawn him or someone like that into this process? It, you know, how do I put this? There's a $5 word for it called cognitive dissonance, to where data that rejects the preconceived idea of what you think should be something is not really weighted equally or of value. And how much pressure for this 25-acre zoning is a want versus a need. Putting things to the highway zone or down there for there to be development, there's also a hidden cost in that. Have you considered the fact that with employment and businesses tends to come COA housing units? You know, is there a net gain or things like that? There's a lot more involvement, and I imagine the planning board may get to it. But are they gonna be doing the things with the existing non-productive zoning code that is frustrating the people who already live here? I imagine that won't, those are a number of questions, and I'm sure Krista can list them, and I would like to have an answer for it, and I suspect some other people too. And reach out and ask Joel what he thinks about it, because at 300 acres, 30 versus what, 4, 5, and then you've got that. Anyway, nothing's gonna change, but at least I've said it.
There was a lot there. In terms of who we've reached out to, the American Farmland Trust, the New Jersey Department of Agriculture, the New Jersey State Agriculture Development Committee, the Rutgers Agricultural Experiment Station, the Hunterdon County Agriculture Development Board, the Hunterdon County Office of Economic Development, the New Jersey Resource Conservation and Development Council, the Raritan Headwaters Association, the Northeast Organic Farmers Association, John McConaughey, who owns, among other things, Brick Farm, Reagan Picard, who owns Zone 7. The reports that we looked at, Farms Under Threat by the American Farmland Trust, Planning for Agriculture by American Farmland Trust and the Connecticut Conference of Municipalities, the Strategic Economic and Community Development Report by the USDA, the agriculture, yes, thank you, the Agriculture Protection Zoning by the Pennsylvania Land Trust Association, Agricultural Zoning prepared by Penn State University, Economics of Local Food prepared by Colorado State University and the USDA, Community Guidance to Maintain Working Farms and Forests from the Rhode Island Department of Environmental Management, Making Small Farms into Big Businesses by the South Carolina Crossroads Resource Center, Farm Labor Housing Ordinance and Farm Direct Marketing Ordinance from Burlington County, Farm Viability in Urbanizing Areas by the University of Nebraska and Rutgers, Farm Viability Enhancement Program from the Massachusetts Department of Agricultural Resources, Conserving California's Harvest from the California Council of Land Trusts, Policy Options for Strengthening Farmland Mitigation in Massachusetts and other New England states from the American Farmland Trust, Growing Opportunities by the National Sustainable Agricultural Coalition, To Market by Rutgers, the New Jersey Agricultural Experiment. So to answer your question, are we doing homework on these issues? We are absolutely doing a lot of homework on these issues. To the extent that you have information that you think would be useful to this process, feel free to present it, and we will certainly take it into consideration. In terms of the costs of this project, most of the work has been done by volunteers who have charged us nothing. There are going to be costs going forward because we're doing this project as part of our master plan reexamination. We are required to do a master plan reexamination every 10 years. If we fail to meet the 10-year deadline, we can no longer enforce our zoning ordinances, which would be an absolute disaster. We have to have our reexamination done by 2023. We're not going to wait until 2022 to get it done. We are working on it now. So will there be costs associated with that reexamination? Absolutely. We got an $18,000 grant from Hunterdon County to help us with these costs. We are going to apply for an additional grant, and I've been told that the county is amenable to that. So we will hopefully raise a fair amount of money through grants. A vast amount of the work on this reexamination is going to continue to be done by volunteers. We have on this planning board one of the best municipal planners in New Jersey. I don't think anyone would dispute that characterization. We are getting work from her for free, lots of work. So yes, you will see invoices for this project. Is it money wasted? That's up for you to decide how you feel about it. I can tell you that I believe it is money well spent. I believe that money spent on this project, which is a fraction of what it would cost if we use solely professionals, is money well spent. In terms of your questions regarding the Ridge litigation, as you know, Francis, we are in the middle of litigation and cannot have public discussions about what's going on in that litigation. So I am not going to discuss the Ridge litigation with you publicly because I have been advised by our counsel not to have those sorts of discussions. You are on this planning board, you know that. You've been in those executive
I do
sessions.
know that, and I also know that you're not supposed to be involved in anything affecting the Ridge, yet you are.
That is not a correct characterization of the judge's decision, so I suggest to you, you go back and reread the judge's decision. This again goes back to my statement, don't believe false prophets. You were totally behind this farm project, Francis, until you weren't reappointed to the planning board. Now that you're not reappointed on the planning board, all of a sudden overnight you are against the farm project. I'm sorry, but I can't give a lot of credibility to that kind of 180 turn.
It's not a 180 turn and it's not a mischaracterization. When I first brought up in March of 2020 that the 25 acre zoning you raised was a taking and that was there really a reason for doing it, you and Mark chased me out this building and you were yelling at me for putting the township at risk of litigation and even calling me a bully. And then loud enough that Maria came across. Shake your head, do whatever you want to do, but it's a fact and it occurred. I was not expecting to be reappointed because I have disagreed with you, and God help anyone who disagrees or says, Richard, Wolf, whatever, I disagree. You know,
We told you that you were going to get the municipality sued because you've been ignoring the rules that apply to planning board members, and you felt that you could go onto people's property at any time. We had people complain about trespassing. We had proof of you trespassing. So that's what we said would get the township sued. Not your comment about taking, which by the way, as a legal matter is just flat out wrong, but that's beside the point. So get your facts right, Francis. And Mark never chased anybody out the door. This is one of the nicest people in this municipality. You can say what you want about me, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to you say something about him that's not true. He does more for this municipality than you will in a lifetime. He's done more so far. And he's nice to people. He's very nice. He cares. When our DPW was here 48 hours straight during the last storm, plowing, he cooked them lunch. Not bought it, cooked it, brought it here during the storm so that they would have food to eat. This isn't the kind of guy that chases people out the door. I'm sorry. Let's go on to the next one, Krista.
Bonnie or Kathy, do you have anything? Okay. Jane Petrolino. I don't know where she went.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jane Petrolino, 224 Wursville Road. I am a customer of Jeff Bowlby's, and we've been here and farming since 1968. We would be adversely affected by this 25-acre zoning proposal. From what I'm hearing, I guess this means that I'm self-serving because I only have 40 acres. And basically a 25-acre zoning change would basically render me not approved for farmland assessment. If this zoning were to pass, I expect to be compensated for this rezoning, as we are farmers here in East Amwell and taxpayers. So therefore, I have to say that I feel that this 25-acre zoning proposal would be unfair to those of us who, I guess, aren't on the 202-31 corridor or on the Ringos Township. It's just not right to do that to those of us who would not affect farming, who do farm in this area, and who have farmed historically for a very long time.
The
To quote
rezoning will
Mr.
not-
Hockenberry, it's theft.
The rezoning will not impact your farmland assessment one iota.
Well, I want to be paid for it. According to what you just said, Mr. Wolf, Raritan paid a lot of money, but East Amwell has not offered us any kind of money to preserve our farm, really and truly.
I'm just going to simply reiterate what I've just said, which is it will not impact your farmland assessment one iota.
But it would affect what we get paid for assessment, because if you go to 25 acre zoning, effectively you're preserving my farm without paying me.
Do you have anything else?
No.
Jess Stahl?
Hey guys, the property that I own in East Amwell is 117 John Ringo Road. A lot of you knew my father. He has since passed away. My siblings and I now own the property. We farm the property. We all have full-time jobs as well and families, but we love the farm and we want to keep the farm, even though it is not easy for us to do so. And I have a couple questions. One for Tamara Lee. I did attend the special meeting, and I thought that you had said at the beginning of that when we changed to 10-acre zoning, it was detrimental to the farmers. So I don't understand how changing it to 25 acres is helpful. I know what my father went through when you guys changed it to 10-acre zoning. It aged him like 20 years because it was so stressful. It does devalue our land. And just what the woman just spoke about, you are essentially then preserving her property without paying for it. And if people in Raritan are able to get more money for preservation because their land is worth more, because their zoning is less. So, you know, if the overall point of this whole farm project is to help farmers, then you're really not helping farmers. And I don't understand who these farmers are that need to keep these large farms. If they need to keep large farms, then they can buy their own farms. But I don't see how the 25-acre zoning is helping a lot of the people. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Do you want me to address that?
Sure.
Well, first, when I was working on this 20 years ago, I did not testify that 10-acre zoning was going to harm farmers. In fact, I actually said just the opposite. But I did say that 10-acre farming was not going to create farms, and it would hurt farms because it would introduce large lots with houses on it, which would start to break up the farms. The report that Elena did, and the one that she presented now 20 years later, essentially proved the point that I made 20 years ago. So yes, I was involved with the lawsuit, but at that time, my perspective was then, and it still is now, if you do large lot residential zoning, that hurts farming. That's not just my perspective. At this point, we now have studies that prove that. And I think I made that point at the meeting.
Okay, so what you just said was that large lot zoning hurts farming.
Large lot residential zoning hurts farming because it breaks up the farms, makes them smaller and makes it harder to farm. And in fact, that's what our research and our interviews in phase one have borne out. We've you talk to the horse farmers and they tell us how the trails that they used to use are all broken up now because there's been these minor subdivisions.
Well, that doesn't matter. They'll just trespass on my farm.
Well, no, I hope not. But, and then you look at, the farmers, the crop farmers need those larger pieces of land. But again, if
So
there's.
how does that help those other large, so that's what I'm kind of confused about, is how changing the zoning to 25 acre zone helps those other crop farmers just by making it so that I can't sell my farm, and that, I don't know, I'm too old to farm it, so I just got to get some other farmer to just do it for me, and that just helps them. I mean,
No, the point I tried to make was that we are getting to a point that we are having a collection of farms that is much more diverse than it has been in the past. So we have crop farmers, we have feed crop farmers and food crop farmers, various types of livestock farmers, horse farmers. Mike talked about all the different types of farming that can develop on smaller and smaller lots. And my point was, the more diversity we have in farming, the better everyone will be. So we don't want to get rid of the crop farmers. We don't want to get rid of all of the large farms. But if we continue to have large lot residential zoning, more of our large farms are going to be broken up by development. So the objective of the farm project is to find ways to make farming more economically viable than subdividing the land.
But Tamara, you seem to dismiss the horse farms, and you just.
Jane, you already had your chance. If you want to, we'll reopen to the public later on.
Yeah, and please, I'm not dismissing horse farms at all. I might not be talking about them as much as I talk about the other types of farmers, but I have spoken with horse farmers, and listened to their concerns as well. And we are trying to talk to all of the farmers and all of the various types of farmers.
Jess, do you have any other questions?
No, that's it for now. Thank you.
You're welcome. Joanne Beck.
Okay. First of all, I would like to thank Rick and I would like to thank Tam. I think that Rick has done an amazing job of distilling a tremendous amount of information that he received from Jeff and has tried to make a presentation that really puts things into perspective. Second thing, for the smaller farmers, I know that part of the farm project, it was suggested that there be a resource person. I hope the smaller farmers know that we have an extension service that already serves them and will help them with whatever needs they have in terms of working with their farm programs. The third thing, in 1999, when you rezoned to 10 acres, the farmers argued tremendously then about how you were going to devalue the farms and the farmland. And this is what happened to the farmers. Farmers rely on their farms as either their retirement funds or for the farm legacy to be handed down from generation to generation. This was argued tremendously at that time of how the farms were going to be devalued. My mother very blatantly used the example of how would you like someone to go into your private house and when you go to sell it, say, okay, you can't use this bedroom or this bedroom when you sell your house because we are eliminating, that portion of your house. And I thought that was a perfect analogy of what you're doing to the farmers when you change the zoning. You are saying instead of 10 acre zoning, you now have to have 25 acres and the value is going to be altered tremendously. So please think about these things. Let the farmers who have their large lots, leave them alone, leave the zoning alone. so that if a farmer needs to sell, so that he can get some money, so that he can have a life, that he can have a similar life to other people. You are, with changing to the 25 acre zoning, totally devaluing the farm. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does either person on their phone want to speak? Okay, Candace?
Hi, Candy Wiggum, 1116 Old York Road. I just want to, when Rick talked earlier, he talked about the 31202 corridor in Ringo's Village, but he didn't say specifically, and I just want to confirm this, that you're seriously considering changing the zoning of the Amwell Valley Agricultural District to 25 acres.
I'm not sure.
Are you asking if the township committee and the planning board are seriously considering changing the acreage?
Yes, to 25 acres.
25. That's still a discussion.
Yes, we're seriously considering that, Candace.
Okay, thank you. That wasn't mentioned when you first spoke, and it sounded like that's in the works, but I wanted to confirm it.
Does anybody else want to address?
The one with the 215 hand up over there.
I don't have that hand up.
Well, that was the bottom.
No, she was clapping.
Gotta learn your emojis, though.
Sorry, we can't hear whoever's speaking.
Yeah, they thought you were raising your hand, Jess, but you were clapping.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I probably hit something
No, it's
I
fine.
didn't
I
know
got
about.
No, you're fine.
New to Zoom.
That's all right. Okay, we're good. So you can close.
Can I get a motion to close the meeting, please? Close the public.
I'll second.
Yeah, move that.
All in favor? Next on the unfinished business is the bylaws of the planning board. Has everybody had time to review?
Tim, hang on Tim, before we move on, can I just say one last thing about the farm project?
Yes, ma'am.
Just to keep the project going, now that the planning board has an idea of where township committee wants us to the direction at least wants us to look, I'd like to suggest that between now and the March meeting, some of us get together with Elena and finalize what the scope of work should be moving forward, so that Elena can put together a proposal for her component. We can figure out what the planning board's going to do, what Elena's office is going to do, get a proposal from her on that. So, we do have some numbers for phase 2. I know phase 1, I think Elena came in actually under budget, or will come in under budget. We haven't got her final bill yet, but I think we're well on the way to coming in under budget. But that phase 1 was with the township committee. She now has a role to play with the planning board. So we're going to have to get a proposal from her. So if a few of us could get together with her and talk about what the scope should be and who does what, I think we could, Elena, I think we could wrap that up by the March meeting. Yes.
I think that sounds doable if we kind of try to talk next week about, fine tuning the scope a little bit. That way we have time to put something together to send to you for discussion for the March meeting.
Okay. And Tim, do you want to be part of that, or does other people on the planning board want to be part of that discussion?
Yeah, Rick,
I'm happy to be part of it.
Rick for sure, and anybody else that wants to be involved.
We have to worry about a quorum, so you have to be careful.
Okay, so it's Rick, Tim, Rick, and myself?
Yes.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. Thank you. Okay, Now on to the bylaws of the planning board. Did everybody get a chance to go over these?
I'll be honest, I have not had a chance to look at them, but I have sufficient confidence in Pam's work. I have infinite confidence in Pam's work that I would be fine, approving them without having had a chance to review them.
Pam, do you want to add anything, Pam?
Am I unmuted? Okay.
You're on.
Yeah, I do have a couple of things I'd like to go over, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Does everyone have, if you have them in front of you, I'm going to be referring to them. First of all, I want to say, Krista and I reviewed this. Krista did a great job going through them and pulling a few things out, bringing them to my attention. One of the first things is, I think every reference that is made to the board secretary, I'm going to change that to board administrator / secretary, because I think Krista is currently the board administrator. There may come a day where she wants to step away from the board and we end up having a separate board secretary to come to meetings and do minutes, but she still does some administration. So that'll give us some more flexibility if we do that. Let's see, on page 7, I just wanted everyone to, to note for everyone, because I don't know if everyone realizes we can do this, but it does allow provisions for work sessions. This is a different type of meeting. We wouldn't necessarily have to have one every month, but if we wanted to have a work session, we could. Sometimes these are handy. These are meetings where no formal action is taken, but we can just have sort of a free-flowing discussion about things. And since we're going into the master planning process, it may be nice not to clog up these meetings with, all of our discussions. I mean, we're talking about some big changes and big policies, and we might want to talk about a lot of the consequences and repercussions of some of these policies. So just know that having a work session would be an option for us to do things like that. Also on that same page, it talks about the order of business. Now, mind you, I wrote this in the middle of last year, and it looks like we have changed the order of business. Krista's going to work with me to make sure that I have to revise this section to make sure it reflects our current order of business, because it appears to be different than when I wrote this. On the next page, I just wanted to note for you, section 1:3-7. This puts some time limits on meetings. It says that we will not start any new application after 10 o'clock, and we will not hear any new witnesses after 10:30. So I don't know that we have anything that formal now, but if we have a bigger application or multiple applications, that might be something we would want to announce at the beginning of the meeting. So if people think they're not going to get heard, they can just leave, or there's a process for that as well. This section says, yes.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
What happens if we're in the middle of an application and 10 o'clock or 10:30 hits? Do we have to adjourn it to the next meeting?
Yeah.
No, what that means is you're not going to start a new case after 10 o'clock. And if you're on a case we get to 10:30, we tell the applicant we won't hear any new witnesses after 10:30, and the case gets continued to the next meeting. Okay. And they have to give us a continuance or force us to vote. And if they force us to vote, we don't have enough information. This is a way of keeping us from working until 2 in the morning, that sort of thing. It's usually a good provision to have in there. So.
I'm gonna have to put that on my contract for my customers.
Good luck.
This section at the bottom of the page talks about deeming applications complete. When I wrote this, we were working with an application review committee. I talked to Krista. She thinks the process we have right now is working. So I want to rewrite that section to reflect what we're doing now. Later on in the bylaws, There are provisions that allow us to set up and use other committees if we need them, one of which is an application review committee, so we can bring it back if we want to, but we don't seem to need it now. So unless there's some strong objection, I'll rewrite that section. Just a couple more things. There are provisions in here. I'm at the bottom of page 11. Again, this is just something I want the board to be aware of. We have our engineering expert and our planning expert, our legal expert. If we need to, if there's a unique application, we have the ability to bring in other experts if we need them. So if we get, for instance, a cell tower application, if we get an application that's got particularly difficult traffic issues, and we hear a traffic expert from an applicant, we have the ability to bring in our own experts to help us analyze the testimony that we're hearing. And those experts are paid just like our other experts are through the escrow. So I just want you guys to know that if you feel like you need additional experts, we have the ability to do that. That's actually in the land use law, but it will now also be in our bylaws.
Yeah, Marnie has a question.
Yes.
Tam, it was from earlier, and actually, I think it might actually be a question for Krista. It says that a board member can request a change to the order of business at the start of the meeting. Is that right, Krista, or does it have to be before the meeting?
We're going to be changing that.
Okay.
So it's going to be if it's an urgent matter. Otherwise, it's the board member would have to get it to the chair or administrator secretary at least a week prior to the meeting.
Okay. Okay.
The next issue, this one, I really need to know what people, think about it, how you feel about it. Page 13, when it talks about the voting procedure. Typically, the way voting is supposed to go, you hear a case, you hear all the testimony, the applicant's finished, you've heard the public comment. Typically, after that's all finished, someone makes a motion and seconds it, and then there's deliberation. Not all boards do it that way, and we have not been doing it that way. And a lot of times when you have a board that has a whole lot of new members, what happens is the case is finished, the board starts talking about it, and only after they talk about it does somebody make a motion. That's very common. Because sometimes if you haven't been on a board long enough, you're not really sure what kind of motion you want to make until you've had some discussion. So I have no problem with that, but if that's the way we're going to continue to operate, then our bylaws should reflect that. It might be a deviation from the Robert's Rules of Order, but if we're more comfortable with that, then I'd like our bylaws to reflect what we want to do. So I'm putting the question out there. Does everybody prefer to deliberate first and then make a motion? Or do we want to sort of get into the habit of making a motion first and then having deliberation and then deciding whether or not we want to amend the motion or move forward with it? Any thoughts, opinions, preferences?
In the past, that's the way I always remember it.
Right, but the former rather than the latter seems more efficient. If I understand it correctly.
You should always make a motion first, deliberate.
No, deliberate, then make the motion.
I mean, that makes more sense here.
Right.
Because then you don't know how you're going to vote.
Right. I mean, I don't have a strong view either way, but it seems to me, I always found it kind of weird that you make the motion and then deliberate. Why would I deliberate and then we do whatever deliberating we're doing and then we make the motion?
I think the theory is you need to know what you're talking about. So let's talk about the motion. But what we end up doing is we talk about the case to get to the motion.
Making a motion puts it on the table. It puts it up for vote. And then you deliberate it and then seconding confirms that vote and the deliberation, and then that's when you do the roll call.
But we know what's on the table.
It's just procedure.
Okay.
It's Robert rules.
Yeah, we know what's on the table here at the planning board. It's either the application or the particular particular issue that's before the planning board, so it's not as though we're going off on some tangent. We know what we're discussing. Well. Touche. Yes. But, look, I don't have a strong view one way or another.
Does anybody else have a view on Zoom?
Tam, should we be getting away from Robert's rules, or should we be if we put it in the bylaws, that makes it okay, or should we be just sticking to?
No, we can put it in the bylaws. It is, the Robert's Rules is just a guideline. It's just a guideline. Personally, I think we should do what's most comfortable. And it's what seems most comfortable, what I've observed is we like to talk about it before we make a motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is everybody in agreement?
Okay, then I'll go ahead and make that change. There's a couple of other technical changes that I'm going to make with respect to noticing. Krista and Yolanta and I went over that today. We really only need to notice once. This has two different noticing times in it. I'm going to remove one of them, and I'm going to change it from 10 days after our decision to 30 days after our decision, which gives Yolanta more time to draw up a resolution. And I think, there's one last thing. There have been, it is possible that we may get an application that comes before us, and so many people on the board have to recuse themselves that we will not have a quorum. It does not happen often. I've been at this for almost 40 years. It's only happened twice. And in both cases, a church was the applicant. And so many people had to recuse themselves that we didn't have a quorum. If we had a separate planning board and zoning board, we would draw people from the zoning board, but we don't. So if we don't have a quorum, we have to find a way to make up a quorum. My suggestion is we draw from the Environmental Commission, because my understanding is they get almost every application that comes before us. So at least they will have seen the application. And if we have to do this, the way it works is we find out that we don't have a quorum, we contact the Environmental Commission, and the most senior member on the Environmental Commission is called first. And you go down the list by seniority until you can find a member to join the meeting. If everybody's okay with that, I'll keep it with the Environmental Commission. But if you have other suggestions where we might draw from instead of the Environmental Commission, I'm happy to put that in there.
Seems to me we have two choices, the Environmental Commission or the Board of Health. And I understand the logic of your view, because the Environmental Commission already gets the applications, and quite often they're familiar with what's going on. They've gone out to the property. So it seems to me that it makes sense to have the default in the Environmental Commission. And the only question is, do we need a second default, which would then be the Board of Health, or is this something we just shouldn't worry about?
I don't think you have to worry about that.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so if that's the way we want to go, then I will keep that in there. And that's about it. So I will make these changes. We'll have this at the March meeting. If it's what everybody, I will send Krista both a marked up copy and a clean copy, so everyone can see what the changes are.
You also wanted to see about the, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. When they want to have if we have an executive session, do you want to hold it prior to the regular meeting, or do you want to hold it towards the end of a regular meeting? What is the consensus of the board? Prior. So we would have it like at 7 o'clock instead of.
Do it on the township.
Marnie?
Especially if you got those 10:30 ones, and then you don't want to do.
No, that's why we do it first on the township. We do it at 7 o'clock.
Okay, all right, so we'll have executive sessions at 7. That's fine. All right. And Marnie, did you have a question?
Just if I found a couple really small typos, can I just email you?
Absolutely, please do.
Okay.
Please do. Thank you. Okay, so again, you'll have a markup copy and a clean copy. If it's okay, then at next month's meeting, we can vote on it, and it's just a simple vote. No big resolution or anything is required. And then we will have a set of bylaws.
Great. Thanks, Tamara.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, moving on. We have no new business. Items for discussion, update from the marijuana subcommittee. There we go.
Oh, I noticed Jeff perked up back there.
Well, see what the funny business in the town is.
First of all, I need to apologize to Mike Mills and Elena because I went through my notes and I did not follow that you guys did want to be a part of this subcommittee. We had a meeting the other night with a woman named Carrie Corboy, who is a pharmacist and works at a medical marijuana dispensary in Pennsylvania. And so she came, we had a Zoom meeting with Marnie, myself, and John, and Krista, and Krista kept us all in conformity. Anyway, we had a very good discussion. We got some information from her. You know, she's looking into starting a micro dispensary. She's done a lot of research. She's involved with PA, so she's got a pretty good feeling for what's going on with their medical. It's kind of very similar to our medical system right now, with medical marijuana system. So we kind of went down the road of discussing about this micro dispensary. So micro dispensary, according to this legislation that's going to be coming through, is it's a building of 2,500 square feet or less. It has 10 employees at the max. And there's, you know, we don't have all the things, but she's talking about a possibility of them being allowed to dispense 1,000 pounds a month of marijuana. That's, I'm not sure if that's going to include edibles. So there's some gray areas still. We don't, you know, obviously she's not an expert and she's not a lawyer and has, you know, interpreted all this stuff.
Yeah, she's not interested in the edible part.
Yeah, no, but I was just trying to get some info on,
Yeah.
you know, a dispensary that, you know, because I know that there's, you know, that's a popular thing too, is the edible end of it too. But just real quick on that note, which kind of, the 1,000 pounds kind of, you know, that's a lot of weed. Okay.
From what you hear.
And you know that now? Because I have no clue. As to how much.
Yeah, okay, you're a farmer, yeah. So I just did some quick math on my simple little figure calculator here. So that's 16,000 ounces a month. And I'm just looking, you know, the New Jersey medical marijuana, their pot sells from, I think, between $4.80 and $5 something, depending on what grade you get. So I averaged $400 an ounce. So at 16,000 ounces a month at $400, that's $6.4 million a month. Cash, all cash, no check, no credit card, no anything. And if what I interpret
Change
is
of occupation.
Where's the grower road?
Here goes the floor plan, we're back to the drawing board.
So at that, our 2% is $128,000 a month, which comes out to $1,536,000 per year going into the township.
All right, that's just by virtue of magnitude, and I actually have our budget here, the draft.
Yeah.
That, I believe, is our entire operating budget for a year. That,
And that's
one,
just-
1.5 million is about, not our capital, but our operating budget for a year is about $1.5 million.
We could get tons of stuff done.
Hey, we might have to have property taxes.
Yeah, right. So you know, like I said, I'm just throwing this out there. I don't know if these are realistic figures at 1,000 pounds a month. You know, I mean, that just seems like a heck of a lot of weed being dispensed. I mean, but I guess if you look at a liquor store, how much Corona and Bud Light do they go through every month? You're probably talking a tractor trailer load. So yeah.
My office is above the liquor store.
Yeah, right.
I just look out and I say, look at that, 9 o'clock in the morning, and there's a line out there.
So, so there's definitely some, big money to be made. I don't know if this is something that East Amwell wants. Like I said, we're just trying to get some information. She did say that these micro dispensaries, because of what they have on hand as far as marijuana, and what they have, it's all cash. So they'd like to have a vault. Well, we happen to have a bank in town, I'm just spitballing, but
Yeah, but the way the rules are right now, there's nothing that's being sold that can go into a bank.
Yeah.
And that's why Governor Murphy just proposed a state New Jersey.
Well, no, we have a bank.
We have a bank building.
That's for rent. It
Oh,
has
the
a
bank
vault,
building.
you know?
You can't put it into the system. Right.
Yeah.
I forgot about that. Bill.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about, but anyway.
Did that bank go in and see if there's any money left over?
But we have the Route 31 corridor down south, down by Savetins, we've got properties down there that are, there's a lot of commercial property down there. Like I said, I don't know if this fits in the East Amwell environment or not, but it's.
Just get it close to New Hope, it'll be fine.
Well, look, here's the way I view this.
There's not many around the area
Somebody
here.
is going to take advantage of this because of the tax revenue. So you may say, I don't want this in East Amwell, but for X, Y, and Z. But then if West Amwell puts it on the 202 corridor, or Raritan puts it on the 202 corridor, you have the same people driving up and down the 202 corridor, but Raritan or West Amwell's getting all the revenue and we're getting none of it. So we get all the detriment and we get none of the revenue.
These people are already driving up the 202,
Right.
31 corridor,
So-
FYI.
And they're not going to be smoking it. These are not lounges where you can smoke. This is you buy and you take.
And they do, she does want to do delivery, so I guess they have a system that once you're set up with this delivery system, so you might not even be talking about all that much traffic, because, if John Stoner is sitting at home and he runs out of weed, and he's too stoned to drive to the dispensary.
We should do a delivery service.
Well, that's what she was talking about.
DoorDash.
So, like I said, it might not even be a big parking
Right,
issue,
traffic.
traffic issue. I don't know. This woman Carrie is very interested in, she was very interested in approaching us. And she's offered up any help that she can to us.
And she's very knowledgeable.
Very knowledgeable. She's getting ready to hire a consultant. I think today or tomorrow, she's meeting with a consultant to try to move her, she's got questions that she needs answers about where she's going, because she needs to have, to even apply to the state, you have to have either a lease signed or a contract to buy a piece of property or a building. So you cannot just say, hey, I want a retail license. I don't know where I'm going to be yet. No, you have to say East Amwell Township, I'm going to be at 232 southbound 202, and that's where I'm going to be. So, she's offered up any help if anybody wants to, she would be willing to come to a meeting.
Public hearing to see what the public thoughts are.
Well, we're definitely, remember, we broke this out into 3 stages.
Okay.
The first 2 months, we do our homework.
Okay.
We learn as much as we can about this, about the process, about the revenue, the positives, the negatives. The next 2 months are supposed to be for public input. We have public hearings. The last 2 months are getting the ordinances, because there is a 180-day deadline. Now, it didn't start running yet because the governor hasn't signed the legislation. But once he signs that legislation, we have a 180-day deadline. So I broke that out into 3 2-month tranches.
Because it might be nice to have Carrie come.
Oh, yeah, for
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
For sure. And like I said, she was literally getting ready, I think she said either today or tomorrow, she's meeting with this.
Today.
I think she said today. So she's going to be getting even more informed than she is.
And I did find out about that distribution center at the old Walmart in White House Station. That the distribution marijuana, it's a public company that owns it. And they're distributing all of their marijuana right now to the medical in Phillipsburg. Which is doing.
So I'm not sure if the groweries are going to be, I think the medical guys are gonna stay with the medical. The recreational is gonna be a whole new crop of guys coming in to grow. You know, the same companies probably, the same corporations that are already into it are probably gonna just, but the guys that are doing medical now are gonna stay with the medical because they're still gonna be, because they're not gonna, they don't have any sales tax on that. You know, the tax is on the recreational. So the people that need it for the medical, but Carrie's saying that they're so overwhelmed at the, you know, the ones they have now, that she's pretty sure that some people are just gonna say, hey, if I can come to Ringo's or Flemington or wherever and get what I need there, I'll pay the tax, you know, because it's not, you know, if I gotta wait in line for 2 hours.
Well, she also said too that the price of that is cheaper than the medical, gonna be cheaper than the medical.
Yeah, but you're gonna be paying the sales tax, so it's, you know, but, you know, like I said, it's definitely sounds like a very lucrative business, but, you know, I don't know, you know, how many do we allow? I mean, is it just gonna be one? I mean, there's already, excuse me one second, there's already, as of June 2020, there was already at least, there was 11% of the 565 municipalities in New Jersey, so that's at least 60, had already passed ordinances saying nothing. They don't want anything in their towns. And that, like I said, that's June of 2020, that's before the election. So, you know, now that it's been voted on, you know, it's probably going to start, you know, that number's probably going to start going up. So there are, you know, people that have jumped on the negative side of it. And like I said, the people that jump on the positive side are going to be, otherwise it's all going to go into the cities is what they're saying. Because, you know, it's all, you know, the dispensaries are all going to be in the big cities. It's going to be in Trenton, Camden, Newark are going to be where the dispensaries are. If all the rural and outsiders say no, that's where it'll be.
Look, that facility on the corner of 202 and Everett's, that's been in the headlines the last couple of months because they were looking to rezone that to allow manufacturing and other uses. They take that, they convert it into a distribution or a retail sales facility. Now Raritan is getting all that revenue and it's right on our border. We're losing, we're getting nothing, they're getting it right on our border. This is something we ought to very, very seriously consider. It doesn't take $1.3 million. If we got $100,000, $200,000 in revenue, what we could do with that is huge. Our budget hole this year is going to probably be about $70,000 because of COVID. It doesn't take a lot to move the needle here. $100,000 would be a godsend. What we can get done, with $100,000.
From what I've read, you know, as far as Governor Murphy not signing, he's making sure that the underage penalties are going to be sufficient. You know, just the same thing with alcohol. You know, I mean, you get caught drinking and driving under 21, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah, there's steep penalties.
I think that's what he's holding up the process for. I think that's, they just went off till what, the 18th or something like that. They pushed back. So, you know, hopefully within the next, I mean, I think it's going to be within the next week or two, he's going to be signing this stuff. You know, once they convince him,
Definitely by March 1st.
once they convince him that they've got enough penalties in here for underage, I think that was his big holdup, was just to make sure that, well, he's in quarantine right now, so he's contemplating that.
What a shame.
So, but, Marnie, did you want to add anything?
No, I think that, the only thing is, I think the 18th is the new deadline for him to sign.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, well, what Rick is saying about the golf center.
Yeah, May Road, yep.
Kind of know the people that are there. You're right, absolutely correct. Raritan Township, I believe, is going to be one of the townships, just in my gut feeling, that will probably go after the marijuana dispensary too, because they're going to want the revenue in there also.
And you have a lot of traffic just going up that 202 corridor on a daily basis.
And you have a
particularly
lot
around
of
COVID.
and you have a lot of commercial buildings that are vacant.
Yep.
So they're going to want to fill those things up. So they want tax appeals, because there's going to be a lot of tax appeals on commercial buildings, bringing their revenue down. So they're going to be looking for something.
And Krista, can anybody see the Zoom? You recorded it on
I
Zoom?
did.
How hard is it for people to see it? Is it a pain in the neck or?
No,
So if anybody's interested in seeing our conversation last night, it was, Marty, John, and myself, and, if,
It was very enlightening.
yeah, tried to ask good questions, and, we got she gave a lot of good information though. So if anybody's interested in seeing exactly what was said and talked about, if I didn't touch on everything, but, you can check with Chris and figure out how that Zoom works. That's beyond my wheelhouse, so. John, you have anything else?
No. It was, like, just like you said, it was a good meeting, and she was very enlightening.
Yeah.
And she would be definitely a person to consult with.
Yeah,
and go
for sure.
further.
For sure.
No doubt about that.
Thanks, Bill.
Okay, moving on to oral reports. Mike?
Prospect.
Nothing major to report, no new business. Our administrator, Catherine, are you stopping me, Rick? Oh, you're waving.
No,
Okay. So our administrator decided, or has taken a job with the Hunterdon County Planning Group, and will, I guess, be finding someone new soon. So I want to thank her for all her help the past year and a half that I've worked with her. She's been very helpful. So thank you.
Marty, Environmental Commission, anything?
We elected Joe Angelone as chairman and Jim Edwards as vice chair. We decided to wait and talk about goals for the next meeting, and that there would be well testing for the community April 5th to 9th. And then, we also talked about taking part in the Arbor Day distributing seedlings.
Great.
And that was that Rick had sent over to the committee, and we all agreed that was a good idea.
Well, yeah, with all the ash trees disappearing, need all the help we can get.
By the way, I talked to Lori Cleveland at the Sauerland Conservancy 2 days ago, and the state is projecting that we will lose 1 million ash trees in the Sauerland region to the ash borer. The devastation is going to be huge. The stress that it's going to put on our environment, on birds, is going to be significant.
Thanks, Marty. Kristen, do you have anything?
No.
I don't have anything. Moving on to vouchers. Everybody have time to go over the vouchers?
I'll move the vouchers.
Motion to move. Second?
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Can I get a motion to open to the public?
Move.
Second.
Anybody in the public like to speak?
Anybody on Zoom like to speak? Candace?
Just a request not to put a marijuana dispensary in the old bank. We're already getting the senior housing. We're going to have the bridge done. I don't want the
That might be a good party, Candace.
No, come on.
There'll be no arthritis in that building.
No arthritis, no back problems.
We'll take that into consideration, Candace.
You
Thank
see
you.
the old people dancing outside in the summertime?
I don't think we want that additional traffic in the village. I think if we were going to locate it anywhere,
Yeah,
Kansas, it would go on 202 for what it's worth.
Yeah.
Anybody else in the public? Jess Stoll, do you have anything? I think that's Frank, is it? That looks like your camera at home.
Oh, sorry. No, I didn't have anything, but hey, get that dispensary, get that tax revenue, and give your farmers a break.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to close to the public, please?
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence?
If anybody wants the planner, I have it in my office, so just let me know.
Great, thank you.
Oh, I do.
Okay.
I like getting that. I was going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I keep them in my office, so.
Yeah, I'd like to get
Sure.
that. From you. It's very worthwhile reading.
Okay.
I'll pick
And
it up tomorrow night from you.
now moving on to my favorite time of the night, can I get a motion to adjourn?
I'll do that.
Second.
Second, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Opposed?
Good night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you,
Night,
everybody.